So one of the things like I'm always interested in, and I spoke to a gentleman called named Dr. Jason Karp. He's like, I'll call him a running expert. He's written a bunch of books on running and has a running certification he does and all this kind of thing. And I talked to him about his book, The Inner Runner, and it talks a lot about kind of the mental aspect of running and pushing your limits, learning about life and that kind of stuff. So I actually want to go back a couple of years. I think this is a story that should be told, or I kind of want to hear it from you. I think it's the Music City Triathlon in Nashville.
Oh, geez.
You know what I'm talking about? So can you take us through that story? Take us through that race as much as you recall.
Okay. So that was a case where, so I guess I wanted to go to that race because I knew the guy who was going to win it if I wasn't there, and he ended up winning it. Spoilers. Um, but I knew Tony White is his name. I'm not sure if, I don't think he's a pro triathlete anymore. I think he's doing a bunch of trail runs now. But at the time, he was kind of one of the faster pros in the Southeast region.
Hmm.
Um, and so I wanted to go there to test myself against him. Um, and so going in, the whole week leading up, I was just kind of preparing myself to hurt like I'd never hurt before, and just basically never let him go. And then on race day, we got our numbers, and it was a time trial start. And so I knew he started about a minute in front of me.
Hmm.
So at that point, I just said, okay, you know what? Whatever you do, you're going to catch him, and then you're just not going to let him go because all you
Hmm.
have to do is finish next to him.
Right.
Um, and so he outswam me by a good bit, but I almost caught him on the bike, and we basically came out of T2 together, and that just kind of set the stage. Well, I guess I was working so hard on the bike, I probably wasn't drinking as much as I should, and we came out
Okay.
of T2 together, and it was hot. I mean, I think the actual temperature was like probably in the mid 90s, but
Hmm.
it was just black pavement and black exposed pavement the whole run.
Yeah.
Um, and just, I don't know, it was just, we were just hurting each other. Like every now and then we just put in the surge just because we went out at like 5:30, even though neither of us could hold it. And,
Hmm.
it was just a battle of wills. And then right before at the last turnaround, so about a mile and a half to go or whatever, he stopped and got an ice rag and some water. And I was like, I finally dropped him. I got this. And so I just was running by myself. And I think not having him next to me, pushing me right there, but having him behind me, I just kind of thought the battle was won.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I had done myself over way before then, I guess. But my body at that point realized what a state it was in, and I ended up just kind of passing out.
Hmm.
It was really strange. I remember I was kind of just running, and I was like, man, I don't really feel well. I think I'll slow down a little bit. Slowed down a little bit, and then walked. And then next thing I knew, I was on the ground. I remember someone coming up to me who was running the other direction and like pushing me around, and like I think someone helped me carry me from where I was in the middle of the road to the shade of a telephone pole, which was cast in the middle of the road, which is like the
Hmm.
only shade around, which is actually super helpful. Um, and then I was just so thirsty, and I waited and waited, and the gator finally came to take me to the medical tent. Then they didn't have any water with them, and I was kind of in and out of consciousness, and it was actually a really scary experience because I had never felt that thirsty, and like I'd never like lost consciousness from
Right.
something like that. So I was kind of in and out of, I don't know. I remember like vividly thinking that I was going to die. Because I just wasn't in the state of mind. I wasn't in like a logical state of mind, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and right after that whole, like, I got to the med tent and got an IV, and I was fine, obviously. But right after that experience, some people were, a lot of my friends were telling me, oh, that's amazing. You were able to push that much, and mad respect and all that. And the one person who I think didn't say that was Ritch, Viola, who's the CEO of Everyman Jack.
Hmm.
And I think his opinion stood out the most to me, and was the thing I took away most from that was why would I do that? Like, how did I not know my body well enough to know that I was about to pass out? And like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was going to die. Why was it worth it to me to push so hard that I might feel like I was dying? Or, maybe I could have, if there hadn't been a gator or someone to take me there, there was not an aid station there or anyone to take me around. I very well could have had heat exhaustion or
Mm-hmm.
something bad could have happened. Um, and so I guess that was kind of the real thing I took away from that was not like, man, I know how to push myself, but man, I need to know when not to push myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to know that I would like I'd always read stories and like every time there's a big national international marathon, there's always a video that comes out of someone crawling across the finish line, and I always thought, man, I wish I had the guts to go out and race my heart out like that, and just make it across the line. And in this case, I made it a quarter mile from the finish line and didn't cross the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned a lot more from that than I would have from winning the race. And man, yeah, it was just a scary and harrowing experience, one that I will not forget.
I think it's kind of like interesting that you came away from it like it sounds like especially with Rich's help, they're like thinking about when that wasn't a really positive thing because I almost feel like there's this just like you said, watching the videos and the photos of people crawling across the finish line, be like, they're really gutting it out to the end, and just there's this almost like mythos of, you know, or like heroism to be able to push yourself that far. And like I've actually had I didn't pass out, but I had a kind of similar experience at 70.3 Santa Cruz, where the last 5 miles, like I was feeling great for most of the run. By about a mile 8, I was starting to feel a little off, and basically I didn't get enough food. The short version is that my day almost didn't get started because of a bike wheel that was flat. I got a spare from a bike tech and got to race, but then I didn't have my nutrition set up. So I ran the last 5 miles with like tunnel vision, like literally black
Yeah, yeah,
coming in on my
I was
vision.
part of
And
it.
there was like 50, 60-year-old guys passing me, near the end, which not to disparage 50, 60-year-old guys, but really shouldn't be being passed.
Right, right.
um, and at the time, because my priority was so focused on like pushing as hard as I absolutely could, I think I came away with it from like almost a positive experience of, that's, I'm glad to know that I am committed enough
Yeah,
to push that hard. But having kind of the ability to step back when you shift priorities, kind of like you have with, knowing that like your PhD is more important to you, you're like, that is some dumb shit. Like, why?
yeah,
It's just a race. Like, what does it even matter?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's always this kind of interesting dichotomy where it's like you want to know that you can push yourself, but at the same time, it's like, man, it's just a race. Like,
yeah.
even if you win, it, is it really going to matter? If you died, like,
Right. Yeah, you got a
so
family that loves you, friends that love you, and no one's going to care if you get second place.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
no
yeah.
one
So
cares. No one cares if you get first place, honestly. Like,
right,
you're doing it for you. So,
yeah, and that's the like, I don't know, just the kind of crazy thing is like, I mean, you understand, especially being around all the EMJ guys, because they're all, you know, very competitive and talented enough to win. So it's like all of this drive to win, but then it's like we're trying to win something that we've made up, because a sport it's not a thing in and of itself. Like triathlon isn't, it only exists because we made it
yeah.
a thing. It's like we're trying to win this thing that we made, and like, what does it even matter? Which gets a little esoteric,
Yeah,
which I'm prone to do, but um, I don't know. It kind of takes time to step back sometimes when that kind of stuff goes on. So that's why I saw your post about that, race from a couple years ago. So I was really curious about what happened and what you took away from it. So
yeah. I think that was not what I was expecting to take away from it when when I got to the car to go home. But
Mhm.
talking to Rich after that was when I was like, wow, it's a different insight. And it just totally changed the way I looked at it.
Mhm. Does that play into your decision to focus more on your
It didn't
PhD at all?
directly. It didn't directly, but it might have. I'm doing this because I enjoy doing this. It's fun. Like,
Mhm.
if I stopped having fun, I would stop doing it because I'm not, there's no money in this for me. It's only for fun.
Right.
And if you're almost like having a race like that once, even if I had, maybe finished but not quite had such a harrowing experience, maybe I would have thought, well, that was cool. But like, it hurt a lot. Like, I would not
Mhm.
like want to do that on a weekly basis. Um, so yeah, like even if I hadn't had that insight, like it's great when you go out there and you have a race where you just like feel like it's you're pushing yourself, but like you're like this feels effortless. Like I'm just going so fast. This
Mhm.
feels so smooth. That's the like race feeling that I want, not the like I'm suffering so much. Am I going to make it to the finish line? That's not a fun race for me.
Yeah, it's from the outside. I almost get maybe I assume you probably had a similar experience where people almost look at us like masochists, like you must be suffering so much.
Oh
And it's
man,
like, well, obviously we go through some amount of suffering, but like you
I
said,
hate
I don't know that anybody's like looking to suffer. Like they're looking for that day where it feels effortless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hate when people talk about, or I shouldn't say hate, that's a strong word. And
It's
I don't
okay.
hate anyone who would say that. I just feel like, that's dishonest. You're not do like you don't know why you're like inflicting this torture on yourself, or people who say those things. Like if I'm being honest, like I want to be an ambassador for the sport. The sport's brought me a lot of joy, and I don't want to like tell everyone. Like a lot of people have no history of running, swimming, or biking,
Right.
and are going to come. You're going to see your Facebook post where you're like, that sucked. I hurt so much. Why do I do this? Torture myself. At least I got this gold medal. And think, like, yeah, that good for him. That doesn't sound fun for me. But it's like, no, I have a lot of fun doing this. I'm like challenging myself in a way that I feel comfortable, and I get to decide how uncomfortable I get on a given day. Uh,
Hmm.
there's not like any kind of masochism or kind of anything ulterior like that, I guess. Unless I mean, for me, I guess there might be someone out there, but
I'm sure there's somebody, but just as a general consensus, it's like,
no one that I feel like I've connected with has genuinely made me feel like they enjoy suffering.
right. I it's kind of similar, but like I feel like not only is it a process to kind of like self betterment, there's which I think there's almost like a genetic component to like some people are more predisposed to want to like better themselves. I used to ask the question of like, why isn't that guy as motivated as I am? I
Mhm.
kind of feel like there's some kind of predisposition there. But as far as like suffering goes, uh, I kind of have since you've been around all the EMJ guys, I'm curious what your opinion is. I have this theory that's almost like people that have had a history of suffering almost have an easier time like using triathlon or running as an outlet. So say somebody was like abused as a kid or like Lionel Sanders kind of backs this up for
Yeah,
me a little bit,
that's what my
with his
mind wandered to
background.
when you're saying that.
Yeah. So it's like he went through hell and then like he just at least the mythos of Lionel Sanders, because I've never talked to him, puts himself through a lot of suffering to be very, very successful. So, have you talking to the EMJ guys and other guys? Do you think there's any credence to my theory?
I can't say I wouldn't say that any of my experiences with anyone on the team would validate that theory, but
Okay.
I wouldn't say that there's like a clear like anti or disagreement.
Right.
I don't know. Lionel's an interesting case, and I don't know him either. But based on the image that he's put out of himself, or that I've inferred from the image that he's put
Mhm.
out for himself, I get the idea that, he switched from one addictive thing, like a negative addictive type of obsession, to a different obsession.
Mhm.
And, my impression is that, he just has a personality that is obsessive, and
Mhm.
he could do it in a negative way, and he figured out how to use it in a positive way. And so I say good for him. Um,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people on EMJ probably have, you know, different obsessions, but uh, I I haven't noticed anything like that in that
Okay.
sample.
Yeah, I was just curious. It's like,
No, no,
I guess,
it sounds legit.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of
Yeah.
pseudoscience that could sound legit.
Right, right.
I'm always just curious about like, so one of my undergraduate degrees is in psychology, so like I'm always very like, and I told you my other degree is in math, so people are always like, well, what the hell is that combination? But um, just personal interest. But anyway, so I'm very like interested in motivation. Like, where does motivation come from? How do people get motivated? Like, how do we even get to this point where we're working out 15, 16, 17 hours a week and
I hope
enjoying it?
I
Like,
hope it's because you're enjoying it. Like, I think that's the
right,
motivation.
right. I mean, I
I
enjoy
think
training
one
more than I
thing
do
that is
racing.
common about a lot of the ENJ guys is a lot of them had some kind of athletic background growing up, where
Mhm.
they learned to enjoy being outside, exercising, whatever. And they kind of carried that through and found a way to continue it into triathlon, whether or not that was, their initial sport or related to their initial sport. It's
Mhm.
just kind of to like exercising.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like basically like one of my best friends who I met through triathlon. His name's Kevin. He wanted to be a professional soccer player, and he played in some of the like the minor leagues. USL, I think, is the league he played in, and couldn't quite make it to MLS play. So like he transferred over to triathlon to continue that like competitive outdoor
Mhm.
thing going on. So he kind of has that same gene. Didn't have the running background. Like I've been running since I was 12, so it's kind of a natural progression for me to get rid of the like the injury prone atmosphere
Yeah,
from
yeah.
college and move on to something where I'm not injured quite so often. Um, but yeah.